Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Vetiva breakfast meeting brought to you by Vetiva Capital Management in partnership with Frontier Africa Report. Today is Tuesday, the 11th of May, and on our agenda for today, we'll be having a rundown of the equity and fixed income markets, as well as a summary of the BRVM Stock Exchange and the wider frontier markets from our partners at Frontier Africa. Before we hear from our speakers, I'd like to remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded and may be shared with third parties, and we are also broadcasting live on Facebook. This presentation is scheduled to hold for 30 minutes. It includes Q&A. However, if due to time constraints, we are unable to answer all of your questions, kindly forward them to us at research@vetiva.com, and we will answer them as quickly as possible. To start off, we'll hear from Sean, equity trader. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Joshua, and good morning, everyone. We'll be reviewing yesterday's market performance in Ghana and Nigeria and our expectation for today in those two markets. So starting off in Ghana, the index closing lower by 3 bips it was a relatively quiet session. The negative start to the week in that market is on the back of a 12.5% loss in SIC insurance, which dwarfed the 0.67% gain in enterprise group. In that session, MTN recorded the highest volume of trade, with 206,000 MTN Ghana with 206,271 shares traded. We expect the index to recover from marginal loss to post appreciation on the back of demand in MTN and other fundamentally sound names in the market today. So we believe yesterday's marginal lower close should be reversed today, owing to the fact that we believe names like MTN and Ghana GCB Bank as well should be able to turn around the negative close we saw yesterday. So moving to Nigeria, the index took off from Friday's positive close to start the week on a green note. The all-share index ended the session up by 29 basis points, in a generally upbeat session, evidenced by the improved volume and value traded in the session. The banking sector saw decent patronage with Zenith Bank, GT Bank, Access, and UBA all closing significantly higher as investors took position in the names that saw some sell-offs in the previous week. WAPCO was also another gainer. Apart from those banks, WAPCO was also another major gainer yesterday. So in the session, we saw Zenith Bank was initially lifted to 24 from the 22.20 level that it closed on Friday. It was initially lifted to 24 at some point during the session before eventually closing at 23 naira. So we saw decent appreciation in Zenith. Still on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, losses in Dan Sugar and Oando dragged their respective sector to close lower. So yesterday we saw Dan Sugar and Oando closing lower, and they dragged both the consumer goods and the oil and gas sector lower. In that space, the banking sector closed the session 2.89% up yesterday. Looking at activity level, like I mentioned earlier, the volume and value improved 36 and 11% respectively. And then looking at the market breadth, it also closed positive at 1.93%. So generally, like I said, it was quite a positive session with volume and value improving as well as the market breadth. So Going into today and our expectation for the Nigerian equities market, we expect this positive appetite to be sustained in the session, with investors cherry picking on some of the banks. We also expect the industrial goods sector to also close positive, with most likely good patronage in both WAPCO as well as Dansem, and which we believe will be on the back of the demand seen in the name in yesterday's session. Though we saw some demand in Dangote cement at slightly higher level than where it closed, but the price didn't change because there was no lot of 100,000. So we believe we might just see that lot happen today, and that should move that sector upward. So lastly, the market will close for the holiday tomorrow and on Thursday. So we'll be back on Friday. Market will open on Friday, and we'll be back then. Thank you very much, and do have a restful holiday.
Thank you very much, Sean. Next, we'll hear from our fixed income trader, Omorige. Good morning, Omorige.
Good morning, everybody. I'll be giving a recap of the Nigerian fixed income market activities for yesterday. I'll start with the money market. System is still very illiquid. Opening figures for yesterday was about 47 billion negative. When we adjusted for repos, market was about 71 billion negative. This is a marginal decline from opening figures of about 5 billion short that was recorded on Friday. Despite the decline in system liquidity, money market rate maintained to trade around 14% levels. In the absence of any major funding in the yesterday, we expect the market to trade at slightly lower levels today, as almost maturity of about 90 billion come into the system. Moving on to the Nigerian FX market, the parallel market remains stable to trade around 483 naira to $1, while the earning window trade at the high of 422 naira to $1, closing at 410.67 naira to $1. That's a 34 kobo depreciation from where it closed on Friday, which was 410.33 naira to $1. So this decline was basically on the back of the significant decline we recorded on the I&E turnover yesterday. Our system closed $32.61 million compared to $146.52 million recorded on Friday. That was about 78% decline. So our outlook for the Naira remains, we believe it will continue to hover around these levels in the absence of any significant inflow of FX into the system. Moving on to the Nigerian Treasury Biz market, the T-Biz market resumed this short trading week on the same theme it closed last week. That was on a very quiet note. The major drivers of this sentiment are, one, the paucity of the long-dated NTBs in the market. The major demand witnessed in the NTB market yesterday was majorly on the long end of the NTB curve. However, there were no offers on that end, leading to a lot of unfit bids at sub 8.1% levels. To the extremely tight system liquidity, there were a lack of significant buy-side interest in the NTB space yesterday, as most players were cash strapped. Overall, a few trades were consummated across the NTB spectrum. We expect the TB's market to trade on a more active note today as almost maturities of 90 billion spurs some buy-side activities. I'll conclude with the Nigerian bonds market. We witnessed moderation in the bonds market yesterday on the back of increased demand for bond securities as players who had oversold their positions, or rather who had short positions, tried to cover their short positions in the market yesterday. The increased demand drove rates to trade at considerably lower levels compared to the levels that were obtainable in the previous trading sessions. The 2024 lost about 40 basis points to trade around 12% levels, while the mid-dated papers, particularly the 2034 to 2037 maturities, were hovering around 13.9% levels from the above 14% levels seen in the previous trading sessions. The maturity that witnessed the most demand yesterday was the 2045 paper, Consequently, offers on that paper crashed to 14 levels and below from the highs of 14.22 levels we saw in previous trading sessions. Our expectation for today is that the bonds market will continue to trade the sentiment that played out yesterday as more players try to cover their short positions. That concludes the presentation for fixed income. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Omar, again. Next, we'll be hearing from Sheikh Group on the BRVM Stock Exchange. Good morning, Sheikh.
Hello, good morning. In terms of the BRVM, the market is still showing some very nice performances, with the BRVM composite growing by 2.54% by the closing of the past week. So it showed the stock exchange displayed its best success in a row over the last 17 months. Investors really displayed their presence in the market, and they traded over 4.5 billion CFA, one of the most important traded volume in a weekly volume traded since the beginning of the year. In the sectorial index, only the BRVM agriculture displayed a drawback of 6.25%, but all the other indices are basically displaying positive, very promising performance. So just like the other sectors in BRVM that displayed more than close to 40% appreciation, in the industry 12%. This was mainly led by the stock price of Nestlé, Nouvelle Edition, Ivoirienne, Citab. So it is expected that this coming week, a lot of financial statements for the annual reviews, as well as the first quarter 2021 will be issued. We can mention NCA Bank, Solibra, Palms, Ivory Coast, Uniwax, and Vivo Energy. So in terms of individual performance, again, Nestlé still whose share price is still skyrocketing, closed at over 42% by the end of last week, displaying over 326% growth since the beginning of the year. So this was mainly led by again, similarly to the past few weeks, it was driven mainly by the performance of the company, with its annual results that were very positive, and the Q1 result displaying a net profit up by 893% compared to last year for the Q1. In terms of other performance, we can also note that you have companies like Cetao that grew by 39.74%, Crown CM by 40% last week, Nouvelle Edition Ivoirienne 36.96%, and Citab 32.59%, among others. In terms of biggest losers, you have SAF whose share price went back by 13.56% last week, because the company has been evolving in the past few months at its highest level, and it was expected that it would fall back a little bit, because it has reached its overheating zone. In terms of the bond market, the bond market cap went back by 0.04%. And it stands at 6,292 CFA, and this was mainly led last week by the transaction of Ivory Coast Treasury bond for an amount of 985 million CFA on May 3rd. In terms of the fixed income issuance, the main public issuers were Guinea-Bissau, Mali, and Niger for an amount of 90 billion with treasury bonds and 25 billion for treasury bills issued by the state of Mali. So only the market responded with a 217% coverage rate, and only 50.53% was absorbed, totaling 126 billion CFA. It is expected for the next week to observe issuance by the states of Burkina Faso, Ivory Coast, Benin, and Togo for an amount of 140 billion CFA. That's it for me in terms of the BRVM.
Thank you very much, Sheikh. Next up, we'll be hearing from Temple Ashaji. Good morning, Temple.
Good morning, and thank you for the privilege. We'll take off from the eastern part of Africa, where we've been announcing to you all this while about the Nairobi Stock Exchange's plans to launch an unquoted securities platform, just like we have the NASD OTC or NASD Securities Exchange in Nigeria. That's a plan of the Nairobi Stock Exchange is coming through this week. It will be happening on Wednesday specifically, and we'll look to see how that will shape that capital market in that country. Of course, Kenya Airways has also just signed an interline deal with South Africa's regional airline, that's Airlink. It is expected that that will help give dual access to passengers of both companies or airlines, given the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic so far on the aviation sector in Africa. So they do hope that they'll be able to manage the airlifting of passengers together with this synergy or with this MOU. Rwanda's got its agriculture sector still accounting for 29% of its GDP. We understand that that sector continues to employ around 72% of the population there. That's also a report that was released recently. We understand as well that the Stock Exchange of Mauritius has approved the listing of Lighthouse Capital Limited on its platform. Some over 960 million units of shares that have just been floated will be listed there. The understanding is that they'll be investing globally in direct property and listed real estate infrastructure securities in that country. S&P, Standard & Poor's, recently affirmed Egypt's sovereign credit rating despite the disruptive impacts of COVID-19 to tourism and exports, which is what Egypt has been known for. Part of the reasons for that is not far-fetched. We know that Egypt has got a huge stockpile of foreign reserves at this point, so they do believe that, and of course they have access to international debt markets more, which has been very accessible lately. So S&P is pegging their projection on the fact that they stand the chance to be able to clear and settle upcoming payments that they may be faced with. Finally, British ride-sharing app Uber is now planning to make an inroad into Egypt. That will be in June. They are planning to start with some 3,000 drivers or thereabouts in Cairo and Giza, major parts of, I'm not sure they're getting to Alexandria, but major parts of Egypt, they will be playing there. So they become one of the major competitors to Uber, which is already dominated the terrain in Egypt. These are the headlines we have for this Tuesday morning, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Temple. We have now reached the Q&A segment of the meeting. If you would like to ask a question and you prefer to speak, you can raise your hand and you'll be allowed to speak. If you prefer, you can leave a message in one of the chat boxes and we'll read out your question. If you're also joining us from Facebook, you can leave a comment in the comment section and we'll address your question. appears we have no questions today, which means we have reached the end of today's meeting. Thank you for joining us. And as Shemu mentioned earlier, it will be off tomorrow and the day after, and we'll be back on Friday. We hope you have a good day and a restful Salah break. And Barakah to all of us celebrating. Thank you for joining us.